We have arrived at the grand, final summit of the entire astrological journey, the third decan of Pisces, the 21st to 30th degrees. Sub-ruled by Pluto and carrying the fierce, transformative, and deeply psychic undercurrents of Scorpio, this is where the cosmic will completes its cycle. While the previous decans focused on initial immersion and emotional healing, this final sector is the realm of the spiritual alchemist, the cosmic visionary, and the threshold guardian. Here, your planets deal with ultimate completions, massive evolutionary transformations, and the literal bridging of life, death, and rebirth. It is where everything that has ever been experienced throughout all 12 signs is entirely distilled, surrendered, and prepared to be reborn into the fiery spark of Aries. 21 degrees Pisces, placed from 20.0 to 20.9. The Sabian symbol, a little white lamb, a child, and a Chinese servant. Symbol meaning: this degree represents absolute spiritual purity, innocent trust, and the quiet guidance of ancient, cultural wisdom. It highlights where your planets possess a gentle, protected innocence that is safely insulated by spiritual guardians or timeless universal laws. What the planets mean here. Sun, a gentle soul or spiritual guide whose core identity is rooted in absolute kindness, often finding their purpose in sheltering the innocent or studying ancient Eastern philosophies. Moon, possesses a deeply pure, childlike emotional core, relies on a quiet, instinctual sense of spiritual protection that shields them from the harsh cynicism of the world. Mercury, mind thinks in simple, pure, yet profoundly wise patterns, excels at writing children's fables, spiritual allegories, or translating ancient philosophies into accessible truths. Venus, drawn to pure, gentle, and deeply soulful relationships, values absolute innocence, absolute trust, and partnerships that feel protected by a higher spiritual destiny. Mars, the gentle warrior, channels physical energy into protective custody, caring for animals, or defending the vulnerable with a quiet, completely non-aggressive strength. Jupiter, exceptional fortune with veterinary medicine, non-profit children's sanctuaries, translating classical Asian literature, and finding wise, protective mentors. Saturn, overcoming early vulnerabilities where your innocence was tested, mastering the ability to build an impenetrable outer boundary that completely protects your gentle inner spirit. 22 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, a prophet bringing down the new law from Mount Sinai. What the planets mean here. Sun, a powerful spiritual leader, ethical reformer, or visionary lawmaker who commands immense moral authority and challenges society to live by a much higher standard. Moon, emotionally driven by an absolute, unbending sense of divine justice, feels an intense inner calling to hold their family or community accountable to higher truths. Mercury, mind is calibrated for absolute macro ethics, writing foundational manifestos, codifying revolutionary laws, and speaking with the thunderous authority of a prophet. Venus, attracted to highly principled, morally unshakable, or spiritually authoritative partners, values complete integrity and a shared, grand evolutionary purpose. Mars, driven by a divine mandate, channels massive physical energy into tearing down corrupt structures and fighting fiercely to establish ethical or spiritual reforms. Jupiter, legendary fortune with international human rights law, constitutional drafting, publishing foundational ethical philosophies, and leading massive spiritual organizations. Saturn, facing early, crushing crises of faith or confronting highly dogmatic authority figures, building an unshakable, self-verified moral spine that commands absolute respect. 23 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, a materializing medium giving a séance. Symbol meaning: this degree represents the literal thickening of the veil between worlds, mediumship, and making the invisible tangible. It highlights where your planets are highly mediumistic, acting as a portal for channeling spirits, ancestral memories, or deep subconscious currents. What the planets mean here. Sun, a highly gifted psychic medium, deep trance hypnotherapist, or artist who shines by pulling completely invisible, otherworldly entities or concepts into plain sight. Moon, possesses a hyperporous, mediumistic emotional body, instantly absorbs the literal presence of spirits or the dead, requiring deep spiritual hygiene and clearing rituals. Mercury, mind translates the unspoken whispers of the ether, optimized for automatic writing, channeling, shadow work, or exploring the deepest mechanics of the afterlife. Venus formulates relationships that feel intensely karmic, haunted, or divinely orchestrated, drawn to partners who share a deep fascination with the occult and the unseen. Mars, drive operates in the literal shadows, channels physical energy into mediumistic trace work, energetic clearing, or piercing through deep psychological undercurrents. Jupiter, exceptional luck with occult publishing, professional mediumship consultation, trauma psychology, and unlocking massive inheritance from unexpected ancestral lineages. Saturn, overcoming terrifying early psychic or mediumistic experiences that felt completely ungrounded, learning to construct rigid energetic circles to control your supernatural gifts. 24 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, an inhabited island. Symbol meaning. This symbol represents self-sufficiency amidst a vast emotional ocean, building a stable community within a porous world, and personal containment. It shows where your planets must establish a thriving, structured ecosystem of their own, independent of the collective chaos surrounding them. What the planets mean here. Sun, a fiercely independent pioneer or community founder who shines by creating a perfectly self-contained, highly functional sanctuary or business off the grid. Moon, finds absolute emotional stability by creating a private island lifestyle, completely content with their own company and a highly exclusive, insular domestic world. Mercury, mind is exceptionally centralized and focused on local sustainability, island ecology, micro-governance, or creating closed-loop data networks. Venus, desires a highly insulated, self-sufficient love life, drawn to partners who are completely happy retreating from society to build an exclusive world for two. Mars, channels physical energy into building off-grid infrastructure, local farming, island conservation, or defending the absolute sovereignty of their private domain. Jupiter, spectacular fortune with private island real estate development, eco-resort hospitality, autonomous community funding, and self-sufficient agricultural tech. Saturn, overcoming an early, profound fear of isolation or being completely cut off from help, mastering the precise skills needed to build a thriving, fully independent life. 25 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, the purging of the priesthood. Symbol meaning. This degree represents absolute spiritual purification, exposing religious hypocrisy, and cleansing corruption from sacred spaces. It highlights where a planet acts as a divine whistleblower, demanding that those in power align their actions with their spiritual words. What the planets mean here. Sun, a fierce reformer, institutional whistleblower, or ethical auditor whose life purpose is exposing spiritual corruption and restoring true holiness to sacred groups. Moon, deeply traumatized by early religious hypocrisy, emotionally fulfilled only when stripping away fake spirituality to find raw, uncorrupted, and authentic devotion. Mercury, mind is ruthlessly analytical regarding moral fraud, optimized for investigative journalism targeting religious institutions, cult deprogramming, and moral ethics. Mars, driven to clean house, channels physical energy into dismantling corrupt hierarchies, fighting spiritual abuse, or enforcing strict accountability in ethical groups. Jupiter, exceptional fortune with corporate ethics compliance, restructuring broken non-profits, publishing exposes, and legal advocacy for victims of institutional abuse. Saturn, facing early, heavy disillusionment with religious or authority figures, mastering the inner strength to become your own uncorrupted high priest of personal truth. 26 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, a new moon reveals that it's time for people to go ahead with their different projects. Symbol meaning. This degree represents the brilliant flash of a brand new evolutionary cycle, the scattering of seeds, and individual divergence. It shows where your planets recognize that a collective chapter has ended, giving you the green light to branch off onto your own unique path. What the planets mean here. Sun, a dynamic initiator or serial entrepreneur who thrives at the absolute tail end of a project, brilliantly sparking the next venture before others even see it coming. Moon, highly sensitive to fresh emotional beginnings, intuitively senses exactly when a family or relationship cycle has dried up and courageously initiates the next step. Mercury, mind is bursting with fresh, highly conceptual ideas, optimized for incubators, seed funding pitches, launch strategies, and mapping out entirely new fields of study. Venus loves the exciting, unpredictable spark of new beginnings, drawn to fiercely independent partners who are constantly evolving and initiating fresh creative projects. Mars, drive is electric and pioneering, channels kinetic energy into launching startups, initiating rapid-fire changes, and cutting ties with stale, dead-weight habits. Jupiter, spectacular luck with venture capitalism, seed investment portfolios, trend forecasting agencies, and launching entirely unprecedented industry models. Saturn, overcoming an early, paralyzing fear of starting over from scratch, mastering the fluid adaptability needed to step fearlessly into a completely blank slate. 27 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, the harvest moon illuminates a clear autumn sky. Symbol meaning, this degree represents absolute fruitfulness, the grand culmination of karma, and reaping the rewards of an entire life cycle. It highlights where a planet can bask in complete abundance, realizing that every choice made in the dark has finally ripened into a magnificent harvest. What the planets mean here. Sun, a celebrated figure who experiences massive, highly visible public culmination and rewards later in life, acting as a literal beacon of fulfillment for their community. Moon, finds deep, luminous emotional contentment by looking back at a life well lived, possesses an innate sense of emotional wealth and a peaceful heart. Mercury, mind is a storehouse of fully ripened wisdom, excels at summarizing major life works, writing final retrospectives, or managing high-volume distribution systems. Venus, drawn to mature, deeply accomplished partners who exude an aura of complete abundance, values a luxurious, stable love life that feels like a perpetual celebration. Mars, drive is highly efficient and focused on the finish line, channels energy into successfully wrapping up massive long-term projects and reaping the profits. Jupiter, spectacular fortune with agricultural empires, massive long-term investment payouts, heritage wealth distribution, and lifetime achievement awards. Saturn, overcoming early scarcity mentalities or an intense fear of poverty, mastering the long-term patience required to build an unshakable, overflowing harvest of life security. 28 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, a fertile garden under the full moon. Symbol meaning, this degree represents intense psychic fertility, unconscious growth, and the silent, nocturnal nourishment of your dreams. It shows where your planets are deeply plugged into the Earth's magic, allowing brilliant creative ideas to bloom effortlessly overnight. What the planets mean here. Sun, a profound nature mystic, permaculturalist, or visionary artist whose vital life force is deeply synced with the literal lunar cycles and the unseen spirits of nature. Moon, possesses an incredibly rich, vivid, and fertile dream life. Their subconscious mind naturally heals and reorganizes itself during sleep, bursting with nocturnal magic. Mercury, mind operates beautifully through intuition and sleep learning, excels at stream of consciousness writing, dream analysis, and decoding organic growth patterns. Venus, deeply romantic, sensuous, and magically expressive, drawn to partnerships that feel intensely fertile, highly creative, and deeply attuned to the natural world. Mars, drive is quiet, organic, and magically timed, channels physical energy into nocturnal creativity, organic farming, landscape design, or subconscious healing modalities. Jupiter, exceptional luck with organic agriculture, sleep wellness industries, botanical pharmacology, and turning private creative experiments into massive commercial abundance. Saturn, overcoming early creative droughts or feeling completely disconnected from nature, learning to patience trust the invisible, quiet cycles of your own inner growth. 29 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, light breaking through many-colored regatta. Symbol meaning, this degree represents a spectacular, chaotic display of individual human efforts suddenly illuminated by a single, blinding ray of divine truth. It highlights where all competitive games or separate egos vanish, completely unified under a sudden flash of higher spiritual realization. What the planets mean here. Sun, a transcendent spiritual beacon, visual director, or masterful philosopher who shines by bringing sudden, unifying clarity to highly complex or divided groups. Moon, emotionally experiences sudden, euphoric flashes of absolute cosmic unity, instantly realizes that all human competition is merely an illusion of the ego. Mercury, mind is capable of sudden, high-level spiritual illumination, optimized for decoding optical light physics, advanced color theory, or experiencing massive breakthroughs in consciousness. Venus, in love with the absolute spiritual oneness of humanity, drawn to brightly enlightened, artistic, or highly philosophical souls who radiate unconditional love. Mars, drive shifts away from ego competition into spiritual alignment, channels physical energy into massive team unifications, spectacular visual arts, or light therapy work. Jupiter, legendary fortune with multinational peace foundations, fine art curation focusing on light and color, spiritual media broadcasting, and global unifying movements. Saturn, overcoming an early life defined by exhausting, petty social competition or feeling lost in a sea of diverse choices, mastering the ability to anchor a singular, higher truth. 30 degrees Pisces. The Sabian symbol, a majestic rock formation resembling a face, is idealized by a boy who takes it as his ideal of greatness, and as he grows up, begins to look like it. Symbol meaning, the absolute, final degree of the zodiac. Known as the Omega point, this degree represents the total embodiment of your highest ideal through pure, lifelong contemplation, the great stone face archetype. It highlights a planet that completely manifests what it meditates on, molding your physical reality to match your spiritual blueprint. What the planets mean here. Sun, a monumental soul whose life is an absolute masterclass in manifestation. They literally become the living incarnation of the cosmic ideal they worshipped as a child. Moon, possesses a deeply transformative, plastic subconscious body. Their physical health and facial expressions literally warp to mirror the exact emotional and spiritual archetypes they focus on. Mercury, mind is a master architect of destiny, operates with the understanding that thoughts are literal things, molding their entire life path through focused, long-term manifestation. Venus, achieves the absolute pinnacle of romantic or artistic embodiment, forms partnerships that function as a living monument to unconditional love and classical beauty. Mars, drive is monumentally concentrated and unshakable, channels physical energy into sculpting a permanent legacy, enduring monumental tasks, and embodying raw mastery. Jupiter, exceptional fortune with legacy real estate, massive structural monuments, masterclass teaching networks, and leaving behind a multi-generational spiritual or material inheritance. Saturn, the grand graduation of the entire 360-degree zodiac. Overcoming early identities of being formless or fragmented, mastering the absolute, timeless law of consolidation to stand completely unshakable as a living mountain of ancient cosmic wisdom, perfectly poised to be reborn into the fiery, action-oriented dawn of Aries. Subscribe, like, and share.